Welcome to the Old Bob Show, located in beautiful Westby amidst the scenic ridges and coulees of western Wisconsin. And now here's your program host, Bob Burrell, along with his special guests. Hello and welcome again to the Old Bob Show, and as usual, how good it is to be here in the studios of Vernon Communications in Westby, Wisconsin. A beautiful, kind of private, peaceful and considerate and a loving community here in western Wisconsin. And the Old Bob Show is happening because of the generosity of Vernon Communications, a sub of Vernon Telephone, if you will, telephone company, if you will, and we appreciate that. And for all of you, we appreciate people who help sponsor us, and today Brad Roll of Roll Media Communications is a sponsor for us, and you'll see his credits at the end of the program here. And if you want something done in software, computer, what have you, he'll be there. You give him a buzz. Well, we have a very interesting guest here today. You remember probably several programs ago, we had as our guest Pastor Don Grevin. Pastor Don Grevin is the minister of Bad Axe Lutheran, Independent Lutheran Church out a ways from Viroqua, Wisconsin. And Pastor Grevin introduced the topic of Christianity versus Islam at that time. And fascinating, and he knows a lot about it because he was a missionary and he worked with Muslims, and he's worked with people who are Muslims, and but he is a very, very scholarly student, if you will, of Christianity and of the Word and the Bible and of Jesus Christ. And because of Pastor Grevin, about like a couple months later, we had on this program a gentleman by the name of Usama Dakdak. Usama Dakdak is an Egyptian Christian, and he was raised in Egypt by Christian parents. And although he kind of grew up within a Muslim community, he became a really I should say committed Christian, he tells me, when he was like 7 or 8 years old, or 7th grade or 8th grade. Since that time, he has been visiting the United States here, and he travels around the world and the country, bringing the word of Christ, the word of the Bible, Christianity, if you will, to anyone that he can talk to. And but his main forte is to try to help Muslims here in the United States to convert back, if you will, or to begin to understand more of Christianity. Well, wouldn't you know that kind of started a string, if you will, of topics about Christianity and about Islam and the Koran and the Bible. And about a month and a half ago, I was at a event at at a Bible school. The Living Waters Bible Camp. It is kind of outside of Westby. It's a lovely camp where there are many staff members there and good men who are helping young people become more understanding and more learned, if you will, about Christianity and about helping themselves become Christians. And lo and behold, I'm walking around this dining room there, and I see this guy walking around there with this T-shirt on, and a goofy hat on his head with buttons all over the place. And so I took a closer look, and I'm looking at him right now here as I'm kind of here, and here he is. His name is David Eisner.
That's me.
David, thank you for coming on board here this morning.
Glad to meet you.
David Eisner is also a scholar of the Bible and of Christianity, and he really delivers the word. He is the walking, talking apparel, if you will, minister of Jesus Christ. And if you look at his hat here, can I take this hat off here? Look at this hat here, and Jeannie, you can kind of zoom in.
Yes, it's made of genuine, authentic, fake fur.
Genuine what?
Genuine, authentic, fake fur.
Really?
And in addition to that, no animals were harmed in the making of that hat.
Incredible. And the buttons on here say, Darwin is dead, I think therefore. I'm pro-life. Abortion is also legalized slavery, and America is paying the price for abortion and the consequences, and I think there's no doubt about that. Mm-hmm. I heard a statistic the other day, David, about 50 million abortions have taken place Is that true?
Yeah, that's true.
And the reason I took David's hat off is because I've never seen him without this hat on. So here you are. And then if we look at David's T-shirt, it's for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. Now, you might think that David's kind of a kook, but he's no kook. He's a very bright and he's a very committed and a courageous and fellow who walks, talks, and preaches the word about Jesus Christ. And the interesting thing about David is that he also has done much studying, if you will, about the Koran. And if you remember when Usama Doc was here, we talked a lot about the Koran. And David brought along this wonderful looking Bible. And when you're out on the road or walking around, David, you said you're going to start taking this Bible with you, right?
Well, when I'm sitting somewhere reading, like waiting for the car to get fixed or something like that, when I'm out in public reading like that,
right?
I plan to. That doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to be lugging it around when I'm walking around down the street.
No, I know
that might happen. If Jesus tells me to, I'm going to do that too. So.
I don't think I've ever met anyone like David Eisner, and I want to ask you, David, when did you start becoming so interested and so involved and so in love, if you will, of Jesus Christ and the Bible, etc., that you decided to devote your life to him?
Well, that began, my search for the Lord began, I would say, in the third grade. In the third grade, I was going to a Catholic school. And of course, in those days, almost all teachers were either priests or nuns. And so the issue of God was always in front of my face. And I remember I was, in those years, those early years, I was being plagued with, well, how do you know, all kinds of voices in my mind would go, how do you know God's really there? How do you know there's a God? How do you know the Bible's true? And so I remember one day the voices were plaguing me especially great, and the bell rang for going back in from recess, and I remember making the decision, okay, I don't believe in God. Well, what I had mistook was doubter versus an unbeliever. The Holy Bible speaks a lot about what being a doubter versus an unbeliever. I was not an unbeliever.
Do you want to explain that, the doubter versus the unbeliever?
The unbeliever is one that really does believe there's no God. I just didn't know if there wasn't any God, and so I was more of a doubter.
All right.
And being tossed to and fro by the wind and the waves. And I don't really remember much of it, much about my spiritual growth or ungrowth, whichever way it was, from then until 7th grade. However, my mom tells me all through those years I was interested in the Bible, and I'd often have the Bible in my lap.
Did you have siblings, brothers or sisters?
Yes, they were at that age quite much younger than I was.
Younger than you were.
Today we're all peers.
Yeah,
but,
okay,
but
exactly.
back then they were a lot younger.
So you were the oldest son, okay, and so you were kind of the model for them, because I was going to ask you, well, if you had all these brothers and sisters, what did they think about you? They were kind of breaking the mold here. All right, so then you continued to grow and go to school.
The next major development in my spiritual growth was in the 7th grade, where I noticed in the newspaper a group called the House of Agape. They were advertising in the Marshfield News Herald, the House of Agape, and they were giving away free Bibles. Well, I didn't have my own Bible at that time. I had a family Bible, but I didn't have my own Bible. So I thought, well, I want to get my own Bible. So I had my dad drive me over there. It took me a while to get him to do that. He didn't want to drive me over, but I didn't want to walk by myself over there. So.
You might explain agape.
Agape. Well, at that time I had no idea what agape meant. But now, of course, I know that agape means love. It's the prime word for love used in the New Testament that God uses. So.
That's right. Well, we used to belong to a group called Agape. This is way back, Jeannie and I were at Bethel Lutheran Church in Madison, Wisconsin. And it was the first time that I really knew what agape meant, but I was a lot older than you were when I came across it. So, okay, so you got your Bible.
And then I read it through, from 7th grade to 9th grade, junior high. I read it through twice through, fell in love with the Gospels, and fell in terror of the Gospels at the same time. And
can you explain why you had that duality there?
I fell in love with the Gospels because I realized that Jesus Christ taught more about love and more accurately about love than than any other thing I'd been reading. And I was reading up on psychology, I was reading up on other religions, and because I was seeking God. I was still seeking God at that time.
That's unusual for a man of your age at that time to be that perceptive, if you will.
But I noticed that Jesus Christ, even though I didn't know if he was really the Son of God, because I still didn't really know if God was there, but I knew that he was speaking the truth. There was still something inside me that knew he was speaking the truth, even though I didn't know. I was in limbo, no man's land, you might say.
And what age were you then, about this time?
Seventh to ninth grade.
Seventh to ninth grade. Wow. Okay. All right.
And I also felt.
How did the priests and the nuns?
This was a public. This was a public school.
So how did okay, all right. Did you run into any teachers that were a little suspect of you?
Back then, the persecution for being a Christian or a person seeking the Lord honestly like that wasn't anything like today. Nothing like today. I got teased, people would grab my Bible, maybe rip a page, or kick it around, or just generally laugh at me and everything like that. But at that time, I really didn't mind, because I was a very shy person, and I could go for days without talking to anybody at school. At home, I was a very social person. I talked all the time, but in school, I was pretty much of a...
That's really a testimony of how our times have changed. I know I have a son-in-law, Eric, who with other friends will go out and they do signs, and they talk about the Lord and God, and they've had some of the same experiences you have, right here on the La Crosse campus, as a matter of fact. Well, let's continue on. So, then you kept growing, and you went to college?
Oh, yeah. I went to UW Stevens Point, which is where I met my sweetheart, Rochelle. And,
all right.
I'm glad I went there.
Well, I am too. Yeah, I was at Stevens Point at one time.
Oh.
Right.
And it was actually there that I basically really got past most of my doubts. I was involved in InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. I met a few really great Christians that really helped me through it, and so it was that was the end of what I call my 7-year search for the Lord, really knowing if God was there, and so that was great. And I actually started to open up in college. I actually started to talk to people, so that was a big step forward too. But then I made the mistake. I still thought I was supposed to be in the Catholic Church, because, well, 2 of my dad's sisters became nuns, and his other sister became very Catholic, lots of kids.
Right.
And so I had the feeling God was directing me toward the Catholic Church, so I thought, well, if I'm going to teach in the Catholic Church, and I thought I was supposed to be a teacher, then definitely I should go to a Catholic school, right? That's how I ended up in La Crosse, because I went to Viterbo, which at the time, before I got there, I thought it was pronounced Viterbo, but...
that's a hard one. The same with me. I'm talking with David Eisner, Dr. David Eisner, about Jesus Christ. And so we're just going to keep on with that. David's from La Crosse here, but as I said earlier, I met him at the Living Water Bible Camp, and it was a highlight. You were a highlight that day for me at that camp. So now you're going on to school. At Viterbo.
I'm Viterbo, right.
Yeah, Viterbo.
Yes, and I would say that Viterbo isn't a good school to go to for religious studies. Might be great for nursing, but it's not great for religious studies. They practically destroyed my faith. So, because I took up religious studies.
Is this common on all campuses, do you think, or was...
If they're not a Christian school, I would not go. If you're taking up if you're going to have to take many classes in the theological realm or the philosophical realm, I would not go to a non-Christian school.
Right. Okay.
Not at all.
It's a common criticism and a common concern these days of parents when their children go off to college, because even though they might have a Christian background, the temptation of the flesh and of the non-word, etc.
And the faculty and staff at most non-Christian schools, they actually have the goal of destroying your Christian faith. That's their goal. Some teachers will actually come right out and say, if you're a Christian now, by the end of my class, I hope to have abolished that mythology out of your life. It's their goal to destroy your faith.
All right. So you went from Viterbo. You left there.
Yeah, well,
but
I
you
graduated.
kept your faith.
Well, yeah, I did, but there was a crisis moment. There was a crisis moment. I had put myself in the front lines. Never, if you're a Christian, never put yourself in the front lines. Let God put you in the front lines, because God will tell you that you're ready to go in the front lines. If you put yourself there, you might not be ready. So don't put yourself in front lines. I put myself in the front lines. All my teachers they called me a heretic. I believed what the Holy Bible teachers and the religious studies teachers were calling me a heretic.
All right.
They were a heretic,
yeah.
But they were calling me a heretic. And so I was being taught, garbage over and over and over, and I had nothing. There wasn't a good church or anyone that could give me the truth to screen out all this garbage I was being taught.
The truth is from the Bible.
Yeah, the truth is from God's Word.
Yep.
But you need the intellectual answer to the intellectual garbage you're being taught, and I didn't have the intellectual answer, and so Jesus actually used the nursing department, not the theology department, but the nursing department to save my faith. I remember crying out. I don't know if I cried out verbally, but I know I was crying out inside, and I know I was crying outside. I was pretty embarrassed. But and with all this stuff I'd been being taught, all I could do is shoot up a prayer to God saying, help. That was basically all I could say, just help.
All right.
And shortly after that, because I had almost lost my faith, at that time I could have gone either way, either the true way, which is what this word teaches,
right.
or the lies that it was being taught.
So you met a good-looking nurse student.
No, it wasn't a good-looking nurse student. No, sorry, no. I was very involved in the pro-life movement.
All right.
And some pro-lifers had challenged me and said, well, you should put a challenge in the Lumen, that was the school paper, saying that you're willing to challenge anyone on the issue of abortion, a public debate on the issue of abortion. And no one took me up on it. So I put the ad out again, and this time I got a response from a girl, but not in public. It was just in the Lumen. She just simply said that I shouldn't be doing what I was doing. There was no reason to do it. So then I responded to her. And that began, the Lumen was very happy with me because they said they got a larger readership than they ever had before because of the debate going on inside the Lumen. But that caused the head of the nursing department to discover, she was shocked to discover that most of her students were pro-abortion.
Wow.
And she was pro-life, so she thought she had to do something to help this issue. So she brought in some episodes of Whatever Happened to the Human Race by Dr. Schaefer and Dr. Sievert.
Now, what time of life was that? What year was that?
Best guess 79 or 80.
All right.
79
okay.
or 80.
All right.
So, and that dates me, I'm sure. So now everyone's figuring out, okay.
You're a young man.
Anyway, but so I went to those episodes of Whatever Happened to the Human Race, and there I was taught, Dr. Schaefer talked quite a bit about Christian humanism and how Christian humanism was just secular humanism with religious terms. And then I was given the answer. I wasn't given the whole broad answer, but I had the basic answer from which to start, and I finally realized how to answer liberal theology. And I to this day, I tell people, what I learned at Viterbo College was what liberal theologians believe, why they believe it, and how to refute it. The first one was easy. They were giving me double dose all the time. The second one, I learned some of why they believe it. And the third one, I had to learn all on my own. How to refute it.
Say that once more, the three things.
The three things. What liberal theologians believe,
right.
Why they believe it, and how to refute it. And the last one I had to learn all on my own.
I'm talking with David Eisner from La Crosse, Wisconsin, but he is a scholar, if you will, of the Bible. But more than that, he is a dedicated, in-your-face believer of Jesus Christ. And you might see David now and then, as he said, he takes with him tracts. Wherever he goes, he leaves the word and leaves some good scripts for all of you to carry with you.
Whenever I go to the bathroom,
Yeah.
I leave tracts like this behind, or
Yes, hold that up here.
yeah.
Yeah.
These are from wmpress.org, completely free. You don't have to pay for them. They're completely free.
Wow, wow. This is called Help from Above, and the love of God. God invites us to come to Him. And you've got wonderful topics here: Christ conquered death, etc.
And also sometimes I leave out the Koran testimony with some other tracts in it. And this is actually the inspiration of the volume the first volume I wrote of the Koran.
There you are. That's fantastic. Well, now, David, your story is so amazing. We haven't even gotten into what I was going to talk mostly about today, was the Koran and the Bible, to kind of continue on with what we started with Usama Doc. But let's finish your story. And right here and now, I'm inviting you to come on for a second time.
Oh, well, thank you.
We probably have a program interruption between now and your next program, but because this is so unusual to have a testimonial from a believer in this day and age who is going out there and betting his life, if you will. And betting your life and betting your body, if you will, as well as your soul and mind on the main streets of America.
Yes, that is true, because even if 1% of the Muslims out there are violent, that's quite a few Muslims out there that are violent. And there's 1 million Muslims in America right now, maybe more. And that is one of my concerns, that once I get my first volume of Truth from the Koran published, that I'll be some Muslims, they actually on their websites tell how to get to a person's house if they don't like you.
Yeah. So we will come to that. That was kind of a quick transition over to that. Before we get into that whole area, and as we've been talking, I was thinking that maybe converting the secular humanists is as much of a goal or much of a challenge as converting Muslims and bringing truth to the Muslims.
Yes, and I often say that a liberal theologian or a secular humanist that studies the Bible, they're just simply a person that studies the Bible that doesn't believe the Bible. So if a person isn't the Christian that writes about the Word of God, that writes about this book, the Holy Bible, you may as well not read them. They're not worth it. Anything National Geographic, forget it.
Right. Okay. Let's quickly go to where you did your theological graduate work.
Okay, I got my master's and my doctorate from Pacific International University. The last I could tell, it's not even
on the West Coast, PLC.
Huh?
Yep.
So, the East Coast, I think. I think it was East Coast.
East Coast? I thought Pacific Lutheran College was on
Pacific International
Pacific. I'm sorry about that. I had friends who went to PLC out on the West Coast, so I've learned something new again from you today. So you got a doctor's. You got a master's and a doctor's.
PhD, theology.
Yeah, and you were going to be a teacher. That was your goal.
Yeah. But
what happened?
Well, I kept on trying to get a teaching position, and it just never landed. I almost got one at Cooley Christian School because the principal at Cooley Christian School was going to hire me as the Bible teacher.
Wow.
And then he got fired. So then I didn't get it.
Why was he fired?
I don't know. I don't know all the ins and outs.
I thought maybe he was too Christian.
It wasn't that I shouldn't say he was fired. He was let go is the way the term is, I guess. Let go, not fired. Let go. So.
Okay. Now, as a matter of fact, what we're going to do is at the next program we have together here, we're really going to talk about Muslims.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about the Quran and the Bible, because according to both you and Usama, the Quran approves of the Bible.
Yes.
And the Bible is, from your viewpoint and all Christians' viewpoint, is an uncorrupted treatise.
No.
No?
No.
It's not been corrupted?
The Quran is very corrupted.
I'm talking about the Bible.
Oh, the Bible. Strike everything.
Yeah, scratch that and let's start over there.
There's not a corrupted word in this book at all.
There we are.
We're talking about the Quran.
All right. Okay. But
this is 100% true because it's the only book God wrote.
Yeah.
Only book God wrote.
It's the Word.
Right.
The Quran, however, recognizes the Bible.
Yes, the Quran mentions the book hundreds of times, over 200 times it mentions the book. And whenever the Quran, by the way, this is Osama Dakdak's translation of the Quran. Whenever the Quran mentions the book, it's talking about the book.
Yeah, right.
So,
okay.
and it always speaks positively about the Holy Bible, never negatively. Despite what Muslims try to tell us, and their own followers, the Quran never speaks in a bad way about this book. Never, not once. And it always speaks positively about it.
So our next program, David, with you will be about the Quran and the Bible, but it will be a lot about Muslims. And from your viewpoint, one of the great challenges that Christianity has today, is that correct?
Oh, well, yeah, for sure. It used to be mostly, the secular bias against the Holy Bible.
Yeah.
But like I said, there's already 1 million Muslims in this country. And if you look at European countries, some European countries are already afraid that they're going to become Muslim nations. Mm-hmm. And if the U.S. ain't careful, the same is going to happen here. We're just a few years behind.
Wow. So this is kind of like a thriller here. I'm talking with David Eisner, and I appreciate so much, David, your being on board with us. So one last thing about you before we end the program today. So you got your doctor's degree and you wanted to be a teacher, but you couldn't get a teaching job.
No, just never happened.
And
so
why was that?
Well, sometimes I was beat out by nuns, sometimes I was beat out by priests, and other times I don't know.
Yeah.
They don't get back to you. They don't come back and always tell you why.
Was this in a Christian school you were trying? Or?
I was usually trying Catholic schools because at that time I was still thinking I was supposed to be in the Catholic Church.
Were you too much for the Catholics?
Good guess.
Yeah?
Good guess.
I mean, I could say the same thing if you would be too much for the Protestants.
Yeah, some people think I am radical.
Okay. Well, David Eisner, what a journey you've had, and what a privilege it is to have you here today to, in a real sense, out-of-the-box Christian, not afraid, but even more than that, extremely instructive.
Don't say not afraid.
All right.
That'd be putting too much. I am afraid sometimes. I'm scared of the next guy about evangelism.
I don't blame you. And you travel around a lot?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
All right. Well, we're going to find out a lot more about David Eisner with our next program. Is that okay if
sure.
we can have you back? And I'd love to have you on next week, but I think I've got an intervening program there, which is also a very important program, and two very important people, the Clarks, who have started a gymnasium for homeschool families and for families that are not in the public school, but which is
that's something very necessary because the homeschool movement, that's one thing that they don't have enough of.
And it's an application, if you will, of a strong faith. Absolutely. Thank you so much, David, for being our guest. We look forward to seeing you again. And boy, I just love that hat of yours. That's really, really fantastic.
Well, thank you.
I could put a couple buttons on mine too. We appreciate very much all of you being with us today on the Old Bob Show. And you can go up on YouTube. Tell your friends, go to YOUTUBE, youtube.com, and you can see us up on YouTube up there. Just type in the Old Bob Show. And of course, we're on Channel 14 here in western Wisconsin, which is really nice, David. It passes about 8,500 homes, something like that. And so we are getting the word out. Meanwhile, all of you have a blessed day and have a great week and a great month. And go with God wherever you are. And we thank you so much for being with us. You've been watching the Old Bob Show on your community channel. Check your guide for other Old Bob programming and have a good day.